dragons weren't unfamiliar creatures to Duan Ling Tian. In his previous life, when he was still on Earth as the weapons specialist, Ling Tian, he had another nickname in the ancient eastern country he was from. The descendant of dragons. He was a descendant of dragons. Of course, the dragons from his previous life were mostly existences that had been deified. At the very least, he didn't believe that dragons existed before coming to this world. Amongst the dragons in the legends of my previous life, there's a 3-clawed divine dragon, 4-clawed divine dragon, 5-clawed diving dragon. But a 5-clawed divine dragon is already the limit of dragons. I've never heard of the existence of a 6-clawed divine dragon. In the ancient eastern country he was from, the more claws a dragon possessed, the higher the status and identity the dragon had. For example, amongst the dragon robes during the ancient times of his previous life, only the Supreme Emperor could wear a dragon robe that had a 5-clawed divine dragon embroidered on it. Even if those kings and princes wore dragon robes, it would only be a 4-clawed divine dragon or 3-clawed diving dragon, and it was far from being possible to confirm with a 5-clawed divine dragon. 6-clawed divine dragon. I've never seen nor heard of it in the past. Duan Ling Tian's eyes flashed with a trace of astonishment as he looked at the back of the middle-aged man who wore a dragon robe with a 6-clawed divine dragon on it, and then he didn't pay any further attention to the person before intending to go around the person. However, when Duan Ling Tian went around him and intended to leave, whoosh! A gust of wind assaulted his face, and then a figure appeared out of thin air before Duan Ling Tian's eyes, a figure that wore a dragon robe with a 6-clawed divine dragon. Duan Ling Tian frowned as he looked at the middle-aged man that stood before him and was looking at him with a calm expression. Duan Ling Tian suddenly realized that the target of this middle-aged man seemed to be him. "Who are you?" Duan Ling Tian asked with a low voice. At the same time, he sized the middle-aged man up seriously. Since this middle-aged man dared wear a dragon robe with a 6-clawed divine dragon, it undoubtedly indicated that this person wanted to stand supreme above the emperor and had great ambition. The middle-aged man had an appearance that couldn't be said to be handsome, yet possessed even features. He possessed a serious-looked square face with thick brows and large eyes, and his calm gaze that looked at Duan Ling Tian seemed as if he was looking at air. The middle-aged man didn't answer when facing Duan Ling Tian's question, and he scanned Duan Ling Tian from top to bottom a few times before nodding. "You're indeed one with good potential." Duan Ling Tian frowned as he didn't know what the middle-aged man meant with these words. For a time, he couldn't help but stretch his spiritual force out with the intention of detecting this middle-aged man's cultivation. but when Duan Ling Tian's spiritual force flashed towards the middle-aged man, it didn't even have the chance to approach near to him before it seemed as if it had encountered a ball of cotton and had nowhere to exert its might on. This. Instantly, Duan Ling Tian's pupils couldn't help but constrict, and trace of shock suffused his face. His spiritual force was unable to detect this person's cultivation, so there were only two possibilities. The first was that this person was a void interpretation stage expert that had comprehended advanced concept. This second was that this person was precisely a void transformation stage expert. No matter which possibility it was, the person before him wasn't someone he could deal with at this moment, and this was something he knew in his heart. Presently, the feeling the middle-aged man who wore a dragon robe with a six-clawed divine dragon embroidered on it was exactly similar to the feeling Feng Wu Dao gave him. Inscription Master. The middle-aged man looked at Duan Ling Tian with slight surprise. Looks like I've underestimated you. Since you're capable of possessing this strength and coupled with you being an inscription master, there's practically no one in the history of the Darkhan dynasty that can compare with you in terms of natural talent in the martial Dao. Who exactly are you? Duan Ling Tian wasn't surprised by the middle-aged man being able to recognize him as an inscription master, and he asked with a low voice. He urgently wanted to know this middle-aged man's identity and the reason the middle-aged man had come. He didn't believe that an expert would personally come look for him only for the sake of chatting. The expert surely had a more important matter. Otherwise, would an expert like this make a move personally? You vow under the 99 heavenly tribulation that you'll be absolutely loyal to me in the future. The middle-aged man didn't answer Duan Ling Tian and instead spoke word by word. Duan Ling Tian was stunned. You want me to make a vow and be loyal to you? In next to no time, Duan Ling Tian recovered from his shock and couldn't help but burst out in laughter. Who do you think you are? Wanting me to make a vow to be loyal to you? Laughable. Otherwise, die. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man continued to finish the words he was speaking earlier, and his calm gaze instantly emitted frightful cold lights that were like blades as they swept towards Duan Ling Tian. Instantly, Duan Ling Tian felt a formidable aura sweep over, and it pressed onto him to the point his countenance went pale and he was unable to catch his breath. But even when facing the formidable aura that stretched out from the middle-aged man, Duan Ling Tian still stood ramrod straight and would rather die than yield. What is your objective? Speak frankly. Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath and asked with a low voice. He didn't think that this person would have come looking for him only for the sake of taking him as a slave, as he was able to notice an imperceptible strand of a burning flowing light within the depths of the middle-aged man's eyes, and that was a flowing light filled with yearning. Thus, he could know from this that the middle-aged man had surely come looking for him because the middle-aged man sought something from him. A dead man doesn't have to know too much. The middle-aged man spoke indifferently before taking a step out abruptly, and he came slightly closer to Duan Ling Tian. Whoosh! Practically at the exact same instant, Duan Ling Tian felt the aura that pressed onto him instantly rise and become heavy like empty tide. But Duan Ling Tian still continued gritting his teeth and persisting without moving in the slightest, and he didn't have any intention of yielding. It wasn't that Duan Ling Tian didn't want to resist, but he utterly did not dare to split his attention and mobilize his origin energy while beneath this formidable aura. Otherwise, he would surely be injured. Most importantly, even if he mobilized his origin energy, it would be impossible for him to flee under the gaze of this middle-aged man, nor would it be possible for him to defeat the middle-aged man. You insensible thing! Let me see how unyielding you really are. The middle-aged man's voice was chilly as he took another stride forward. Instantly, the aura strengthened. Whoosh! The extremely formidable aura rose once more, and it seemed to have transformed into a large mountain that pressed down onto Duan Ling Tian, pressing him to the point his body trembled slightly, and his countenance became pale to the extreme. The middle-aged man's brows raised as he glanced at Duan Ling Tian, who persisted without moving up until now with surprise, and then he took another step forward. Bang! Practically at the instant the middle-aged man's feet descended, Duan Ling Tian felt an even more terrifying aura blast down onto him, and it was impossible for him to forcibly resist it this time. Pu. Duan Ling Tian was struck to the point he spat out a mouthful of blood, yet he was barely able to support his body forcefully and didn't bend before the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man seemed to have been shocked by Duan Ling Tian's unyielding character, and then he said in a low voice, "I have to say, I slightly admire you now. How about this? I'll give you a final chance. Either die or make a vow to become my servant." Humph. Duan Ling Tian grunted coldly, and used his attitude to answer the middle-aged man. Stubborn fool. The middle-aged man's expression instantly darkened, and then he raised his leg with the intention of taking another step forward as he wanted to use his formidable aura to completely press down upon Duan Ling Tian to the point of collapse. As this step moved out, milky white flash that shot into the sky skyrocketed out from the middle-aged man's body, and the flames were extremely material as if they were real flames. At the same time, the energy of the heavens and the earth roiled in the sky above the middle-aged man, and the air in the sky seemed to have been completely sucked out at this moment. Ancient horned dragon silhouettes that covered the sky had gradually condensed into form, and they bared their fangs and brandished their claws in a threatening manner. Before long, the ancient horned dragon silhouettes that covered the sky stabilized, and there was a total of 200. The strength he exploded out with by relying solely on origin energy was comparable to the strength of 200 ancient horned dragon, and it was precisely the mark of a first-level void transformation stage expert. Obviously, this middle-aged man that wore a dragon robe with a six-clawed divine dragon was a true void transformation stage expert. Are you so sure that I'm surely carrying that thing you want? Before the middle-aged man's stride descended, Duan Lingtian looked calmly at the 200 ancient horned dragon silhouettes that appeared in the sky above the middle-aged man and spoke slowly. As expected, the middle-aged man retracted his foot that was about to strike out when he heard Duan Lingtian. At the same time, the aura that enveloped Duan Lingtian was retracted by him, and then the flames formed from origin energy that skyrocketed on his body had gradually died down. In the sky, the 200 ancient horned dragon silhouettes dispersed along with this, and they seemed as if they'd never appeared earlier. You know that I've come for something in your possession. The middle-aged man's eyes flashed as he asked slowly. What else? Could it be that a void transformation stage expert like you has really only taken a fancy to a void initiation stage martial artist like me and wants to take me as your servant? Duan Lingtian laughed with ridicule, and his deep gazes seemed as if it was capable of seeing through the middle-aged man. Even though you're only a void initiation stage martial artist, you'll one day be able to break through to the void transformation stage with your natural talent. There ought to be no one that would refuse a void transformation stage servant. The middle-aged man spoke with a cold voice. So, you gave me two choices, yet both are actually for the sake of obtaining that thing. Either I make a vow and become your servant to survive, yet I have to hand that thing over to you, or I die and you directly take that thing. Duan Lingtian's expression remained unchanged as he stared concentratedly at the middle-aged man. Right. You're extremely intelligent, yet it's unfortunate that intelligent people usually don't live for long. The middle-aged man's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. Is that so? Duan Lingtian suddenly burst out in laughter when he heard this, and he laughed brilliantly. What are you laughing about? The middle-aged man frowned. It's nothing. I'm just curious about what your expression will be like when you kill me and notice that the thing you want isn't in my spatial ring. Duan Lingtian shrugged and spoke indifferently. You know what I want? The middle-aged man asked. If I'm not wrong, the thing you want ought to be that broken stone tablet I used not long ago during the Dynasty Martial competition. Duan Lingtian glanced deeply at the middle-aged man and continued. But do you think I'd carry such an important thing with me? A member of the Darkhan dynasty's imperial family wouldn't really be so stupid, right? You know I'm a member of the Darkhan dynasty's imperial family. The middle-aged man's expression that had always been composed was finally moved. Never had he imagined that Duan Ling Tian would actually be able to guess his identity.